I started writing an academic paper when I was an undergraduate student in the University of Hong Kong when I was an undergraduate student. And at that time, there were courses available for me to take to help me with how to start writing academic papers. And later on, when I became an academic, basically I would just learn from my peer and also by reading and learn myself. So this is how I learned about academic writing. When I first started writing, I made, of course, like many people, many mistakes. First of all, it's a fear. I was so reluctant and scared about writing in the first place. And later I found that actually it can be solved quite easily, just by simply facing challenges. Start writing as early as possible, collect as much material as possible from, for example, the literature, from the internet, and write down the points that you think would be useful. And that would be very helpful for us to start writing. And when I first wrote my academic paper, I made a mistake because I didn't care too much about the audience. So in that particular paper, I put in very fundamental concepts. Eventually, it turned out that those concepts are so fundamental and basic to the academic or to the experts in the field, who are actually the audience of my paper. So that is a very obvious mistake. And later, I found that actually we should really be careful about who will be reading your write-up. That is very important. And based on the audience, you will have to choose what style and format your writing should be. I overcome those challenges by reading more and writing more. And also, I'm very active in showing my writing to my peers, and also, even now, I show my writing to my students to obtain their feedback. I think that's very important. Just practicing more will be able to enhance my writing skills. Sometimes I focus on writing on my own. Maybe in some cases I will miss the important points. So my own research students may be able to point that out, and that is very important. So in general, usually they will tell me about how they feel about my writing and whether the results would be presented in a logical manner. Because for the same piece of writing, I will read it over and over again before I submit it or before I would publish it. So in general, I think obtaining feedback from my students and from my peers is actually very important. My advice to the students would be practice more, read more, and don't be scared by it. And when you first start writing academically, you should really jot down the points you think would be useful. Eventually, they may not be useful at all, they may not be even relevant, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you jot down the points and you try to plan what is going to be shown in your academic writing and practice more, I think that would be very helpful eventually. When they write a final year project report, I think they should be really familiar with what people have done. Again, the background information is very important. And after all, this kind of information should also be shown in the introduction chapter as well, because it's part of the very important intro to tell people what people have done and probably have not done, and why they are doing the work why they have done the work that was proposed in their project. And at the same time, they should also clearly show how the data were obtained scientifically and how to analyze them. And eventually, of course, they need to put in some discussion and also conclusion about the most important thing that they found in their final project. To improve or enhance the writing skill, I think the internet may play a very important role. And nowadays, if you just Google, you can find all kinds of material information. And in many cases, in my own situation, when I have problems in writing or when I'm not very sure about how to express a point, I would go for Google and go for the internet to see how people wrote that particular line. And in many cases, actually, it will help me a lot. So I suggest that students will make full use of the internet. Of course, one has to be very careful because internet will have a lot of resources. But at the same time, if you find that many people will be expressing that for example, a line or sentence in a certain manner, I think that would be quite accurate and quite trustable. So in that case, I think going for the internet, Google would be quite useful.